Because in gardening, I've spent, a lot of time hauling manure, making compost, only to see my garden beds shrink every year.
Yep.
Right? It's like a lot of work to keep that carbon in the soil. It's like, oh, permanent compost. And that's what it is. It makes your compost a lot more permanent. So my garden beds now grow over time. So here's the thing about biochar charcoal. First of all, charcoal. What's charcoal is the question.
Yeah.
And it's biomass. Wood is commonly used, or it could be corn cobs, crop waste, things like that. That's heated up so that it loses, it becomes carbonized. So it loses all the other elements, which are mainly hydrogen and oxygen, and becomes pure carbon. And so the temperature at which you make it is really important, as well as the feedstock. But if you look at a piece of wood and the elements in it, it's got carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, some nitrogen, potassium, etc., in smaller amounts, and then really small amounts of what you call ash, which is the minerals that won't burn, won't gasify, so they stay. And so this pie chart here shows you the different constituents, and this thing here called volatile carbon, that's the tarry gooey stuff that when you make it at low temperature, like this barbecue charcoal or the torrefied wood pellets, there's a lot more of that volatile carbon. The higher the temperature is, like this is my homemade biochar, the less of this volatile you have, and so the stable carbon fraction gets much bigger.
Mm.
And then so it's a continuum.
Yeah.
And then activated charcoal is charcoal that's been made in a process, at high temperature process or even a low temperature process, that's then blown out with high temperature steam to increase the surface area of it, so it makes a better a filtration medium. That's what activated charcoal is mostly used for.
Mm.
And so the question is, which of these can be biochar? And they actually, in the right circumstances, they all could be beneficial in soil, although you wouldn't want to use the briquettes that have, lighter fluid in them. But, you can buy like lump hardwood charcoal for barbecuing that's made at this lower temperature.
Mm.
And if you compost it so that the tarry, oily stuff kind of gets consumed in the compost pile, it can be good biochar.
Mm.
But this is the easiest, the homemade stuff that and we can talk about how I make it, but that's the easiest to use. It's really, it'll be 80% stable carbon and just a small amount of ash. Okay, so here's how to make biochar. The technique is called pyrolysis.
Yes.
And from pyro meaning fire and lysis meaning separation. So we're separating the gooey stuff, tarry stuff, from the pure carbon. You do that with heat. So here's like one of the simplest ways to do it that a lot of people have probably tried. Take any kind of container. I actually, on a small scale, will use a clean paint can from the hardware store
Oh.
and poke a couple holes in the lid and throw some pine cones in there and cook it over a fire just as a demonstration,
Yeah.
and get these beautiful little black pine cones. But the way this works is that combustion proceeds in stages, and pyrolysis is just a stage in the combustion process,
Mm.
which starts with when you add heat to wood, drying first. The first smoke that comes out of it is actually water vapor.
Yep.
And then the other gases come out, mostly the hydrogen containing compounds. And once those are gone, the remaining carbon links up into char. And then if you keep going, that char will also burn to ash. So the first way that a lot of people have tried is to make a retort. So you have a container with a hole in it so the gases can escape, and you cook it over a fire. And that really protects the char from burning to ash. So that's nice. But it's hard to do a lot of biochar that way. So here again, the fire triangle, what it takes, you've got to stop that fire. You're making char in an open flame. You got to stop that fire by removing one of these three at the end.
Mm.
So here's the process, how we do it. We can do this in a burn pile.
Yep.
So you because this illustration shows how the wood goes from wood to charcoal and then finally to ash. We just have to stop the process here at the end. So I call it combustus interruptus. And so you can see this log here that's charring from the outside in, and once it gets all the way to the center, part of it will have burned away to make the heat to get the inside charred, but that's okay. That's how it works. And so, one of the things to remember here also is that small pieces are going to char more quickly than big pieces.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is the ring of fire kiln. So, we're putting it out here at the end. Yeah, here's some different methods. So, what we call a conservation burn, which is just doing it at a burn pile. This is the ring of fire kiln that I manufacture and sell. And it's a container with an extra heat shield around it, which is really helpful from a couple of points of view. One is that it protects the workers from the heat, and the other is it holds in more heat, so you get a more efficient process. And then this is an air curtain burner, which is a slightly bigger, more expensive machine that probably most permies are not going to buy.
Yeah, that's like municipal or forestry level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, here's some of the. I'm really these days into the forestry aspect of it a lot, being that I live in Oregon and we have a lot of fires and a lot of fuels we're having to deal with. So we have these techniques we've developed to light the piles on the top. Um, when the flame is on the top, it burns the smoke, which is really awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and then we put them out with water. And here I am looking at a pile that we did a year ago. I'm just taking a peek to see what's growing there. And it's
Wow.
stimulating, beautiful herbs and wildflowers and mushrooms um, really nicely. And then in this same site, we went then about a month later and did some seeding with native seeds. But we spread the seed evenly and then came back in the spring. And you could see wherever there was char, there was a lot more seed germination because the char's holding water. So this is one of the cool things that happens when all the air comes from the top. It's pulling the smoke in there.
Yeah. So it's not creating a big old cloud that's bothering your neighbor or something.
Oh, that flame is. Oh, here's Joanna. This is from the FERC project.
Oh, yes. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So you see those loops of smoke getting sucked into the kiln.
Cool. It's magic.
And this is how the kiln works. So all the air comes from the top. It goes down through the wood, the brush, and circulates up and just does this kind of rolling vortex. And then you've got air also coming from between the two rings
Mm.
that helps kind of keep the smoke in.
And the bottom is sheet metal. Did you seal the bottom? That's not
No,
ground.
no, it's not sealed. You have to seal it with dirt.
You seal it with dirt. Okay.
Yeah, and you can see here how effective the heat shield
Wow.
is. I have a Substack, by the way, called
Oh, cool.
the Biochar Prepper.
Okay.
I just started this summer just to kind of carry on with more reporting from what I'm doing beyond the book because I wrote the book last year and I keep doing stuff. So
Yeah.
you've got subsistence biochar, which is what I'm doing. And these are all the technologies. So there are little stoves you can make that will produce biochar. There's, you can make it in a furnace, you can make it in a retort. There's a lot of different of technologies that basically people can invent themselves.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I have in the book is a design guide
Okay.
for how to make your own biochar kiln. And so I call that subsistence biochar, and that's happening all over the world. A lot in Africa and places like Thailand, where different groups are helping small farmers figure out how to make biochar locally in very low tech ways, and it's making a huge difference in their ability to grow food.
Yeah.
And then there's another category that's also what we might call place based. Made on the land and used on the land, and that's stewardship biochar. So that's what we're doing with the forestry projects. And this is really important, I think, and deserves public support.
Mm.
Because it benefits everybody.
Yeah.
We can restore degraded land. We can rehabilitate toxic mine sites with heavy metals. And so,
Ugh,
there's various different initiatives trying to promote this at a larger scale
yeah.
on the land. And I just call that stewardship biochar.
This is my experience as a teacher, a couple of thousand people over 30 some years. Everyone is moved by this. Virtually everyone is moved. And many, many, many people, maybe even the majority, have a life-transforming experience when they encounter it. It's like there's no going back. There is no going back. It's like you went right through the looking glass.